Welcome to an episode of Chat Sports Talk, and welcome to the 2024 College Football Championship Weekend Preview video. That's right, we're here at the last stop before that final poll. The CFP comes out. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And to find out who's going to be in the playoffs and conference tie-ins, and then who's going to get in, who's going to get out. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole stacks up. Also go over my last week's picks, the games I went after that had implications on how this weekend is going to turn out to be. And we'll dive into this. Probably some of the controversy dealing with the college football playoff. I'll try not to get too evolved in that because I have my own personal take on that. Also showcase my updated point index poll, which will have a lot of people probably fierce about that. So we'll dive into all that, and let's go ahead and look back at last week. Of course, Thanksgiving weekend, a lot of college football games. A majority of them were Friday and Saturday. But let's go ahead and just dive in some of the games I picked. The first one on the docket was Miami versus Bowling Green. This was for a seat in Detroit. And the way that Miami, Ohio's kind of played conference games, they were doing extremely well. They only had one conference loss heading into this one, even though overall they don't have the best record. But in conference play, that's where they kind of show up. And Gabbert definitely showed up in this game, being 18-28. Not that great, 255 yards, but 3 touchdowns, which led the Red Hawks over the Falcons, ensuring that Miami, Ohio will have a chance at the MAC championship. Other side of the coin, Ohio's playing host to Ball State. Ball State's terrible team. just no doubt about that. It's just a terrible team. Ohio doubled them up, 42-21, and that's going to be your matchup for this week. And then I tackled the Big East, or not Big East, wow, Conference USA, there we go. And once again, I have no idea how to stack up Conference USA because it always seems to be the opposite with these guys. You think one team should be the one winning, but there's the one that come up short. And between Liberty and Sam Houston, it was for a spot in the Conference USA Championship. There's a lot more to go involved in that one, but the winner of that definitely put themselves in the driver's seat. Liberty won this one, there'd been no question Liberty would be in, but Sam Houston won this game. Maybe other factors had to come in for Sam Houston to get in there. But first thing, Sam Houston had to do it. Now, Watson didn't have the most productive passing attack for the Bearcats. He was only 19-33, but he had 202 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he put it where it counted. Ducker, almost 100 yards on the ground. And it was a slow, methodical game. And Sam Houston had to hold off a late charge by Liberty as Sam Houston edged out Liberty 20-18 to give them at least a shot at making to the Conference USA Championship game against Jacksonville State. And then the game. Who would have thunk this? I mean, really. I thought this was the chance for Day to finally get over this Michigan hurdle. And this was part of his best opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, his team didn't think so. Michigan's like, and they had something to say about this one. Ohio State played like pure garbage, hot, steaming garbage. They stunk the place up. It was a pathetic showing by the Buckeyes. This is a team that they should be dominating in this factor, but they couldn't get anything going. Michigan was in control for pretty much the onset. beside that early lead that Ohio State had and a 10-10 halftime, Michigan was controlling the whole aspect of this game. Ended up winning 13-10, ending Ohio State's chance of redemption against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. But I don't think ruining Ohio State's playoff capabilities. And then the real fun started afterwards as Michigan tried to plant the flag in the middle of the field. And this started a whole melee. Full-out brawl happened. The police had to go in there and use pepper spray, break it up, because these guys were going at it. They were like, even looking at you trying to investigate the use of pepper spray. You see these guys, they're wearing pads and have helmets. Of course you're going to use pepper spray. You're going to use pepper spray or tasers. And pepper spray clears out the field a lot quicker because you get a lot more people. But just bad look by the Big Ten and these two universities after this. Brian Day's future at Ohio State could be numbered because he hasn't won since his first year against Michigan. He's great against everyone else except for Michigan. He's definitely going to have to make a deep run in the playoffs to keep his job. If he has ended up being a one and done, because he's probably more like Ohio State's probably going to get a first round home game. But if they lose that home game, I have a feeling Day will be gone out of Ohio State. All right, enough of that. That's over to College Station, where the Aggies were playing host to Texas once again after many, many, many moons of them not facing each other. And I get this A&M because they're defending their home, but Texas was the one that came out first and really dominated Texas A&M. I'll give credit where credit is due. Ewers was efficient enough. 17-28, 218 yards, and a touchdown. He didn't have to be, Superman too much. He could just been Nightwing. He's just there, supporting character. He doesn't do much. They give it to Wisner, who had 186 yards on the ground. They just pounded A&M. The defense controlled every aspect. A&M's defense was not much of a factor, except for that second half where they finally locked down Texas, but their offense couldn't get off the ground. Texas rolled 17-7. Let me head up to Syracuse. Now, Miami always had the thing of living on the edge. This is what they've been doing, finding ways to come from behind after trailing. This was a game they actually led at one point, 21-0. Syracuse came back before halftime, got within one touchdown. That second half, McCord and the Orange just came out firing. McCord had 380 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, as Syracuse just outpaced Miami, ending Miami's chances of probably making the playoffs now by knocking them off 42-38. I'll get more in that in a little bit, but Miami definitely not going to Charlotte to take on SMU. We have to Las Vegas, where UNLV is playing host in Nevada, playing for the Fremont Cannon. Basically, first spot in the Mountain West Championship against Boise State. If UNLV lost and Colorado State won, Colorado State would got the bid, but if they both won, UNLV will get the bid because they're ranked higher. That's just how Mountain West tiebreaker is, because they didn't really take on each other. Lewis put up some decent numbers for the Wolfpack, 27-37, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it was all Thomas for the Rebels as he ran over the Wolfpack, 135 yards and a touchdown. One-sided affair by the Rebels as they dominated Nevada 38-14 to punch their ticket to the Mountain West Championship. Then we have the Sun Belt clash between Louisiana and Monroe. This one I picked the Cajuns, the Raging Cajuns, one of the best school mascot names out there. Sorry, you're not gonna change my mind on that one. But I do figure that this one was going to be a tight matchup between these two, as Fields didn't have much of passing success. He couldn't even get 200 yards passing, but he did get 2 touchdowns. So he did it where it counted. As it just continues to have issues for that. Hardy's trying to do everything he could for Monroe, 172 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Back and forth battle. Once to the fourth quarter where Louisiana actually pulled away and won this game 37-23, clinching a Sun Belt West and putting them into the Sun Belt Championship game. Then heading back to Conference USA, once again showing that I don't know what hell I'm talking about with this conference. It seems like every time last week I picked the 2 Conference USA games and I lost them both. This week I had 2 Conference USA games and I lost them both. Jacksonville State heading to Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky, thanks to Sam Houston, all thing they had to do was win, and they're in to rematch with Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State, how to do is play spoiler to keep them out so they get Sam Houston. Phil Kemp had other ideas. He actually had a very productive game. 28-47, 301 yards for only 1 touchdown. As Western Kentucky was able to edge out Jacksonville State 19-17. To ensure a rematch, Western Kentucky was able to survive the rushing attack of the Gamecocks. And we'll see if they can wash and repeat this weekend. And then Marshall visiting James Madison. This one I had James Madison winning because I really like James Madison. It's a shame they couldn't do much last year because they're on probation or because they're moving up a level, so they couldn't really do anything with them. But Marshall came to town. I figured they would give Marshall a run for the money. They actually did. For a while, it was James Madison leading this bunch, leading 17-0 at the half. But when Marshall came out of the tunnel, that second half, quickly tied it up. The game went into overtime because they make sure it was all knotted up. Once again in overtime, it took a couple sessions for this to happen, but Marshall was able to edge out James Madison 35-33 to put the Thundering Herd into the Sun Belt Championship game, clinching this East Division of the Sun Belt. And all in all, it went 5-5. And then after that weekend, the latest, greatest college football playoff poll came out, and definitely without controversy. Right now, the top 4 teams are sitting in the first round bye, not ranked by ranked, but top 4 conference champions for first round bye: Oregon, Texas, SMU, and Boise State. State's at 5. That's fine because I think they're 3rd in the polls. Notre Dame 6, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, Alabama, and Arizona State. A note to take is Miami's actually sitting 12th, but because of how the system's set up, Arizona State's outside the top 12, and I think they're like 14. They get the jump. The problem I have is Alabama. And I already hear the keyboard clicking with that statement. He's like, are you going to put Miami ahead of them? Yes, I would. Heck, BYU might be a bit of a stretch, but definitely Miami. But they lost to Syracuse, and they had a 21-point lead. They didn't score 3 points against Oklahoma. To make people happy with the point index. With my poll, number 25, Army still maintains that position at 10-1. Duke returns to the top 25 with a 9-3 mark with their win against Wake Forest. Mizzou returns as well with their win. UNLV moves up 2 spots to number 22. Clemson drops from 13-21 after the loss to South Carolina. Illinois moves up to number 19 from 23. After mentioning South Carolina, only moves up 3 spots. Colorado only moved up 1 with their win. Syracuse jumps up to number 16. Tennessee only up 1 after beating Vanderbilt. Alabama maintains 14. Boise State has moved up to number 13. Yes, that's right. I have Boise State over both Alabama and Tennessee. Miami drops 5 positions to number 12. BYU up 1 to number 11. Cracking the top 10 is Iowa State, up 1. Arizona State is number 9, up 1. Georgia also moves up 1 to number 8. Indiana moves up 1 to number 7 after their demolishing of Purdue. Ohio State drops 4 positions after losing to Michigan to number 6. The top 5, Penn State actually slipped a spot to number 4 and swap places with Notre Dame. SMU moves up 3 to number 3. Texas, number 2. And, of course, you have Oregon. But still, you still have another week still left to play. And it's championship weekend. We'll have games on Friday as well as Saturday. And let's start things off with my first loss of the weekend. And before I even start, I'll just go ahead and say it now. The Conference USA Championship from Jacksonville, Alabama, as the Gamecocks will play host to the Hilltoppers in a rematch from last week. And the Hilltoppers actually were able to handle Jacksonville State's running attack. And now they're going to face each other again. So they already know all the tricks and whatnot from the last time. So can teams learn and regroup and reattack the situation? And that's going to be a huge factor that comes in this particular game, is who has learned from the mistakes from the previous week. Is Veltkamp going to have the same success he did last week? Can Stewart and Huff really elevate the rushing attack for the Gamecocks that the Hilltops were able to find ways to stop last week, but can they do it 2 weeks in a row? And that's going to be a huge factor in this one, because right now analytics still have it in favor of Jacksonville State at 64%. The spread right now is at 1.5. And I see why, because Western Kentucky showed that they could stop the run. They couldn't do it when taking on, was it Liberty 2 weeks ago, where Liberty was just running all over them. But they could against Jacksonville State. And I think knowing that there's going to be a part of a few trick plays in this game. You're trying to separate it, get momentum on one side. And because the conference championship game is at the home stadium, I would take Jacksonville State, but I'm uneasy to do this because, once again, it's Conference USA. The past 2 weeks, I'm 0-4 when it comes to this conference. Going out to the Mountain West Championship up there in Boise, Idaho. So Boise would get the cold factor to really help them out in a rematch against UNLV. So they did face off early in the year where UNLV was able to edge out, or Boise State was able to edge out UNLV. Wow, 29-24. All the way back October 25th. So some time has surpassed. Can Williams continue to find some magic? Can Thomas really lead the charge for the Rebels? This is going to be Genty and his ability to continue to rack up the yardage and the touchdowns to help his Heisman profile. I think it's really between him and Travis Hunter who's going to win the Heisman this year. It's going to be the first time I think a non-quarterback is going to probably win it. And the way that Genty's really been dominating, you can put a brick wall in front of him and he'll run right through it, no problem. And that I think is going to be the case. Right now, analytics has it 69% for Boise State. This spread is 4.5 in favor of Boise State. I don't see any quarrels with that. I think Boise State will win this game, put Genty on the national stage when it comes to playoffs, and probably ensure that Boise State finds themselves on the first round bye, sitting probably in the Fiesta Bowl waiting for the opponent. But I'm taking Boise State. Now we head over to the American Athletic, where you have Army playing host to Tulane. And Army being 10-1, a magical season they have in front of them. They still have the game against Navy next week as well to really put that cherry on top to get that CIC trophy. But this is when these games can daily really lead this team to a conference championship. I mean, it's quite possible. If you look what he does, he has 850 yards in the air, over 1,300 yards on the ground, with a total of 34 touchdowns. 34 touchdowns. How can the Green Wave stop this? The only team that had any success in knocking off this team was Notre Dame. And Notre Dame did it with very good defense. They were able to corral. Tulane couldn't close out the season with a win against Memphis. So there's definitely some things to worry about here. But for some reason, analytics have it 67% for the Green Wave. They're favored by 3.5. Everything is like pointing towards Tulane. I mean, does Menza really think to really factor too much in this? I think he will have a productive game. I mean, he is a over 2,500 yard passer with 20 touchdowns. I do think he will get there. Hughes will have problems rushing. Army will definitely have a factor in that one. But I think it's just too much of this triple option. I mean, yeah, they struggle against UTSA. They're showing a little flaw there. And they do kind of struggle with teams that actually, put up points like they did with East Carolina, but they still end up beating them. But I think Army can do this. I mean, it's forecast to be 28 degrees, and it's going to be cold. Tulane plays down in New Orleans. They're used to hot, humid weather. So I think it's going to be a huge factor in this aspect. I do think Army should come out on top and win the American in their first year. They're off to the Big Ten Championship there on Saturday. Big 12 Championship. Wow. In Arlington, Texas. So they'll be playing in the Dome. And Scatterboo, probably not going to be in that Heisman room, but definitely should be kind of, looked at for some awards, because he's really established himself as a dominant runner, almost 1,400 yards on the ground, 17 touchdowns. Levitt doesn't really have to do much, 2,400 yards plus in the air. Struggling with numbers in English right now. 21 touchdowns and only 5 picks. On the other side, Iowa State, Beck has more yardage, less touchdowns, and more interceptions. So depending how you want to look at the numbers, depending how you want to rate these quarterbacks, well, I'll put Levitt a little bit better because he has less errant throws, but he doesn't throw as often as Beck does, because he does have a competent running game, which really elevates Levitt's play. And Hansen is not really going to help that offense much. I mean, Iowa State took on a very good Kansas State team, edged them out 29-21. You've seen what Arizona State's done in the past few weeks. They also handled Kansas State 24-14. They also handled BYU 28-23. Battled them punch for punch. I have a feeling it's going to be the exact same way here. But analytics has Iowa State by 55%. But ASU is favored by 1.5. And this is going to be a good game between these two. Arizona State's looking for their first conference championship since the days of Jake the Snake Plummer when he won the Pac-10. I have a feeling they're going to do this again. It's going to be through. It's going to be by the legs of Skydaboo. I think he's going to be the determining factor in this game. I'm taking the Sun Devils to knock off Iowa State and clinch their spot in the playoffs. Now we head to Mac Nation and the Motor City, where the 8-4 Redhawks will play host to 93 Bobcats. Determine who's going to be the MAC champion. And these two teams are coming in here, riding winning streaks, dominating opponents. I mean, Ohio had that huge win against Toledo. I mean, that'll send you over. Miami also has that huge win against Northern Illinois and Bowling Green, especially those last 2 weeks. So it definitely both these teams are riding high. They have some marquee wins in conference that really elevate their play. Navarro for the Bobcats, 1,900 yards, but 10-10. All right, Gabbert, definitely a lot better passer, 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, but also 10 picks. So you look at passing-wise, you look at the Redhawks, rushing-wise, Mosey, over 1,000 yards, but only 4 touchdowns. Tyrus, 960 yards, 8 touchdowns. Running-wise, you have to look at that one. I'll probably go more of the edge to the Bobcats because he finds the pay dirt a little bit better. I think this is going to be a very close matchup between these two. Like I said, Miami, Ohio, like I said early in this video when they're to review the Bowling Green game, they find ways to win in conference. They do great in conference. This is still an in-conference game. They're going to plant their flag as the team of the MAC. Analytics has them at 55%. They have a 1.5-point spread advantage. I like Miami in this one as well. Like I said, they play in conference. They play extremely well. They took on some of the big hitters and then didn't flinch. It's like, Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. Didn't flinch. I'll take Miami to win the MAC. We head to the SEC Championship in the ATL, where we have the 11-1 Longhorns taking on the 10-2 Bulldogs. I think both teams are safe. They both will be in the playoffs. It's going to be a very good matchup between the two. And Georgia has issues, but Georgia also has the win over Texas. This is a rematch where Georgia's defense manhandled Texas in Austin. So now Texas really has to go into a hostile environment, even though it is a neutral site, but it's Atlanta, Georgia. Athens is only a few miles away. So it's virtually a Georgia home game on a big stage. And Texas is going to struggle. They're going to struggle mightily against Georgia in this game. I don't have any quarrels about that one. Ewers is going to be running for his life. He needs to get rid of the ball quickly. And he comes with schemes where Wisner is a little more effective in the rushing attack to alleviate some of the pressure on Ewers. Georgia's defense is going to be very stout, but they're also very susceptible. Look what happened against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech took Georgia to task, but just couldn't close out the deal. Ole Miss took them to task. Florida took them to task. Alabama. So Georgia is vulnerable. Can Texas replicate that type of stuff? Overlook what they did the first time around, because a lot of football has been played since then. So they're not the same teams anymore. Beck, definitely not a dominant quarterback. He's had his issues. Can Texas capitalize on his mistakes and put points on the board? Can Ewers avoid disaster himself from the Georgia defense? This game, I think, will be less. There'll probably be 3 points or less separating them. Right now, the line is even That lets you know how close this game is going to be. Analytics does favor Texas by 61%. So they give a slight advantage. They give advantage to Texas. I think Beck is going to be a huge factor in this game. If he can limit his mistakes, Georgia should win this. But Texas defense has come alive. The only team that really scored recently that scored above the 20-point mark was Vanderbilt. It's going to be that type of game. If Texas can have a type of game like they did against Vanderbilt, probably cough up a few plays, but force turnovers, force 3 and outs, really be a huge factor. It's going to come down to that one, and Georgia's defense looks vulnerable. UMass put up 21 points on them. Georgia Tech had 42 points on them. Tennessee, they handled mightily. Ole Miss put up 28 points. Which version of that Georgia defense are you going to get? That's going to be another question. But I do think it kind of revolves on which version of Beck shows up. But I will give it to Texas in a heated battle between the two, which probably won't put Georgia down too far down the list in the rankings because of how close I think this game is going to end up finishing. But I do think it's going to be probably less than 3. But I will Texas to win in their first appearance in the SEC championship. Sun Belt, and we'll go out there to Lafayette, Louisiana, home of the Raging Cajuns, to take on the Thundering Herd of Marshall. And Marshall struggled to get into this matchup. Had to go double overtime against James Madison to get in there, and had to outgun Old Dominion the previous week. Couple weeks back on November 2nd, they struggled against Louisiana Monroe. Same Louisiana Monroe that was taking Louisiana to task, but couldn't quite get over there. They had to outgun Troy, 51-30. Lost to South Alabama. With Louisiana probably being that CFP if they had that loss hanging over them. But I think everything is pointing towards the Cajuns, because Woldridge is really looking to kind of push up his numbers. Almost 2,400 yards passing, 17 touchdowns with 5 picks. Braxton's only 1,400-yard passer, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. A little more efficient with his passing. But I think kind of runs with Turner in the rushing attack of the Herd. He has 864 yards, 6 touchdowns. Davis for the Cajuns. He's a 777. 7-7, 7-7 with 9 touchdowns. But I think it's going to be the Cajuns defense are really going to have to step up on this one. Marshall's defense kind of missing the past couple of weeks. Do they return in this game? Can the offense really put up the numbers? Analytics has it. Louisiana, 60%. Louisiana has a 4-point advantage right now. I will take the Cajuns to win the Sun Belt Conference Championship. Then we head over to Indianapolis as Oregon, in their first year in the Big Ten, undefeated, the only undefeated team in the nation right now, taking on the Nittany Lions, 11-1. Who would have thought that? Well, Michigan can go there and kiss. Penn State could go kiss Michigan for getting them into that setup, because we already knew Indiana was going to get in there. In fact, they were able to get slipped past Minnesota 2 weeks prior. That really kind of helped them out. There's a few games that Oregon really has to look at and go, okay, why we struggle here, what we need to do. I mean, a couple weeks ago, they had that scare against Wisconsin. Still ended up winning. They had a lot of scares at the beginning of the season, which I thought, they rectified a lot of those problems, because they almost got beat by Idaho, almost got beat by Boise State, but found ways to win. Penn State had a few games. I mean, they had a game against Illinois. They couldn't really do much, but still ended up winning. Minnesota was another key factor. The Ohio State game, they just couldn't get over the hump. I mean, they made it close. They just couldn't get over that hump. Franklin really has a hard time against Ohio State and Michigan. Then takes on Oregon. a team looking to really plant themselves is probably the team to beat this year. But they are beatable. LR, over 2,600 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks for the Lions. Gabriel, over 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. Advantage Oregon. Running back wise, Singleton for the Lions, 730 yards, 7 touchdowns. For the Ducks, James, over 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns. Advantage Oregon. Defense-wise, looking at some of the past games, I'll give more advantage to Oregon than would Penn State. But analytics have Penn State favored at 54%, but the spread is Oregon at -3. I like the spread. I do think this will be a close game. I think this is the first ever meeting between these two programs. Really, in over 100 years of college football, and especially these two programs, they never met before. There we go. There's the words I was looking for. This is going to be a dandy. Much like the SEC game, both teams will maintain their playoff position. They both will be in there depending who's going to get the first round bye, who's going to be probably having a home game. I mean, this probably be a slot for the Rose Bowl for all intents and purposes. I do like Oregon this one. I do think it probably will be a close matchup. We'll probably look at something like the Wisconsin game, like Oregon suffered with. But I think Oregon is just too talented for Penn State to really try to corral. But Penn State will try their best and will do it for a while, or we're going to find ways to skirt around that one and end up winning in the end, probably by 3 points as well. But I will give it to the Ducks winning their inaugural Big Ten championship. And we'll end things out there in Charlotte between the surprise SMU Mustangs, their first year in a power conference since the old Southwest, on one of the crown jewels of the ACC, Clemson at 9-3. Clemson had that horrible game against South Carolina earlier in November. Horrible game against Louisville. SMU has just been struggling. I mean, they had that one game against Duke where they struggled, but they were able to overcome their own mistakes to win. I mean, it's rare to lose the turnover battle and still win the game. They stumbled against BYU early in the season. I called that, by the way. Battle against Pitt. Battle against BC. They continue to battle these programs that should be better than them. But they always seem to find ways to win. Find ways to overcome mistakes, overcome hurdles that they put themselves into. And that's the key factor. Klubnik for the Tigers, 3,000 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 5 picks. Jennings for the Mustangs, 2,700 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 7 picks. Advantage, Clemson. Running attack, Mufa, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Smith, over 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns. Mustangs. This is going to be really a good chess match between these two offenses. Which one can exploit deficits in the defense? Klubnik's definitely a better passer. He doesn't throw as many interceptions. But if SMU's secondary can tighten up and eliminate a lot of issues like what South Carolina did, and they kind of do what South Carolina did, and their defense really limit the effects of that Clemson offense, it's going to play huge factors if they can find ways to pick off Klubnik. Huge. Clemson has to be able to stop Smith in that backfield. Because if Brashard Smith can get running, it's going to be spelled doom for that Clemson team, because then he could dictate the pace of the game, which then will elevate the chances of Klubnik throwing picks. I mean, Clemson hasn't had very many good games outside. I mean, that week 1 kickoff where they got obliterated by Georgia. Definitely not the same team. This is going to be a good matchup. Right now, analytics has it SMU at 54%. The line has Clemson favored by 2. I understand why, because of Dabo Swinney being in charge of this one. He knows these type of scenarios. He knows what's to expect. SMU is actually, I think, going to play for the playoff lives, because if they lose, do they fall all the way out and not make the playoffs? So that way they get Miami back in there? Who knows? That'd be kind of a hard thing for the committee to kind of really, put on there. But if Clemson wins, that part means Alabama might be out if SMU stays in. So this is going to cause a whole mess depending on how this game ends and what happens on Selection Sunday. Because they're going to factor in that Army-Navy game. And I'm having a difficult time trying to determine which direction I'm going to go with this game, because I also liked, to embrace the chaos every so often. Because I like to just see the turmoil happen. But this SMU team has really risen and really put itself in front of the nation. Like, look at us. This is the reason why we were invited to the ACC. This is what we're doing. This is their first year in conference play, and they're already dominating it. No, they didn't play Miami, but they are taking on Clemson. So we'll see what happens here. I'm going to be uneasy on this one, but I am taking SMU. But I do think this is going to be a very, very close game. I really do think so. Clemson's definitely going to come full stop. It's going to play all the tricks, trick plays, going for a lot of fourth down plays. They really put SMU on their heels. But the Mustangs are just going to just get past the Tigers at the right point in time. Kluben's going to make a terrible mistake probably towards the end of the game that leads to a game-winning score. And I'll give it to SMU edging out Clemson to clinch their spot in first round bye in the playoffs. Well, there you go. Those are the picks for Championship Sunday. And there's a lot to unpack because there's a lot of implications in there. Can Alabama still maintain their position in the playoffs? Will things change in the last week? All of a sudden they put Miami ahead of Alabama. Possibly. What happens if SMU loses and Clemson gets in? Does SMU stay in and Alabama gets booted? Quite possibly as well. There's so many different scenarios that can play out to dictate how this is going to transpire for Selection Sunday. Part means I'll probably do a video on Monday, kind of recapping Selection Sunday, my poll, my take on all the whole scenario, and we'll kind of play it by ear from there. And it should be an interesting weekend for college football fans, and especially those looking forward to this new playoff system. But let me know down below what you think of these picks. There's only 9 of them. There's only 9 conferences to worry about nowadays. I think this is conference realignment, killing the Pac-12 this year. But who do you think you got wrong? Who you liking in this playoff? Do you think your team has a shot becoming the first winner of this 12-team format? Let's mix it up in the comments below. Keep it civil, keep it safe. If you like what I do, like my ramblings, my butchering English language, and the side missions I do, go ahead hit that thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. Another thing you do to support this channel is you can subscribe. It's absolutely free. Doesn't cost you a dime. Absolutely nothing. $0, euros, pesos, kroner. Doesn't matter. Nothing. All I do is hit that subscribe button, click that bell icon, turn notifications on next time I post any more content on my channel. I'll see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.